Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, April 27th, 2023, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda. But before I do that, I'm just going to make a note at the top of the meeting. For those who are watching on YouTube, you'll see a lot of bodies in chairs. It is Bring Your Child to Work Day, and we are participating here at the Commission. And so if there are murmurs in the background, that is why. So now, Commission Secretary.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, April 20th, 2023, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of April 20th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 14, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 15, awarding $139,929.92 in Lifeline Outreach grants to 211 Wisconsin Incorporated and Indian Head Community Action Agency with the amounts outlined in Table 1 of Commission staff's memorandum.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 10.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 11 through 14.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And for agenda item 15 in docket 5LL 2023, I move we approve the 2 grants for the 2023 Universal Service Fund Lifeline Outreach Grant Program consistent with the Secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 16, which is docket 9815-CE-100, and Commissioner Huebner is leading us through this discussion.
Great, and I'll go slow because we do have some students in the room that are going to follow along, I understand, with our decision matrix, so I'll take it slow. First, I'm just going to give some introductory remarks about the project. This project is an application from Northern Prairie Solar LLC, which is a subsidiary of Leeward Renewable Energy LLC. They have proposed a 101.2 megawatt AC solar photovoltaic generating facility in the town of Ceylon in St. Croix County. Renew Wisconsin and Clean Wisconsin were interveners in the proceeding. The public hearings were held virtually on January 18th, 2023, and the party hearing was held on January 20th, 2023, also virtually. We received public comments during the development of the environmental assessment and again from December 8th of 2022 through January 20th of this year. We received approximately 65 written public comments about the project, and 2 individuals also participated in the public hearing. The specific application in front of us today is for a merchant generating plant. Thus, under the CPCN statute, many requirements apply, but items related to need and economic factors are not part of our decision today. For this proposal, our job is to consider whether the design and location is in the public interest, considering alternative locations, individual hardships, safety, reliability, and environmental factors. In addition, a key issue is whether or not the proposed facility will not unreasonably interfere with the orderly land use and development plans for the area involved. I will be supporting the application today, but as we will discuss, I do have some concerns about specific aspects of the layout that we'll go through in our decision matrix. However, overall, our state's energy priority requirements for new electric generation include solar energy among the 2nd highest priority on the list. The project will reduce the state's need to import fuels and pay money to other states. The project will not produce any air or water pollution after construction, and the project was designed to avoid wetlands and waterways. And finally, benefits will accrue to the local and state economy. Approximately $404,000 annually will be provided to local governments hosting the project. So those are my opening comments. My understanding, we don't need to discuss the uncontested items, but I am going to just go through so they can flip their pages.
Okay, sounds good.
Are you both ready?
Ready.
Okay. So are you ready to follow along with this, if you're going to? Few? Okay. So on the first page, it's what's called an uncontested alternative, so that we don't actually need to discuss. So we're going to skip issue 1, and we're going to skip issue 2. So we're moving ahead to issue 3. And that is, if approved, would the proposed project comply with Wisconsin Statute 196.491 3D6 and not unreasonably interfere with the orderly land use and development plans for the area involved? For this, I'm at alternative 1. We didn't have any opposition from local governments, towns, et cetera, that would indicate otherwise.
I agree. I'm also at alternative 1.
I am as well.
Okay. So skipping ahead, now to issue 4 is another uncontested, so we're skipping that, and we're gonna go to issue 5. So issue 5 is the design and location of the proposed project in the public interest, considering the siting criteria of Wisconsin Statute 196-491 3D3, or should the commission modify the proposed siting areas? In this particular case, most of the array areas were not really contested. In particular, the primary arrays, there was nothing noted about the primary arrays. However, for 2 of the alternate arrays, there was questions where there's existing forest land and whether or not that should be specifically excluded. Based on my read of the record and, to me, the availability of grassland and farmland around those forest areas, it makes sense to me to adopt the specific language that is listed right here, which is the applicant shall not install PV arrays in siting arrays 9 and 10, but only where the mass tree clearing would be necessary. So other parts of those 9 and 10, to me, could be utilized. So that would put me at alternative 2 with that condition.
So can you repeat what your condition would read?
Yep, and in our, I don't know if the children's one is the same, but our decision matrix, page 7, it's in bold there. So I would just exclude basically the forested
Right.
areas of 9 and 10.
Okay, where it's
Yep.
necessary, okay. I'm at the same place, and, for me, one of the biggest factors, based on what's in the record, is that the applicant is still in the preliminary design phase, and the panels haven't been selected. So there was a little bit of commentary about, well, this is gonna have a cascading effect, and if you move one thing, then it's gonna impact the rest of the project, it's gonna increase costs. I don't think that that's the case. I think that these are alternates, these aren't even primary sites. And because the final design has yet to be completed, that this is the exact right time for us to make these types of decisions. And for me, the potential for negative impacts that would come with that type of tree clearing for these alternate arrays 9 and 10, that potential, the potential negative associated with that outweighs any concern about a cascading effect. So I wasn't persuaded by that argument, so I agree with you, Commissioner Huebner.
I'm also at alternate 2. I think, based on what Chairwoman Bach said, establishing upfront where we don't want them to do mass clearing and consider alternate sites helps give them more information about when they do make those design decisions. So I'm very comfortable with alternate 2 as well. Thank you.
And this kind of comes back to, we have them propose more than just the land that they need for reasons like this, to me.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're moving on to issue 6, and that is a long list of general conditions. What general conditions should we adopt, similar to those that have been included in prior electric construction orders and attached to this specific project? And there's a list of A through S, and then there's an additional one that was added based on our inclusion from other commission final decisions related to the applicant reporting on a quarterly basis its efforts and the efforts of its contractors to recruit Wisconsin residents for this construction. And there was no opposition from anyone on 6A through S, so I'm supportive of all of those conditions, but I would also add the one identified in our decision matrix that we've included in other orders.
Agreed. I would take all A through S and add the reporting requirement about the workforce that is recruited to do this project.
I agree. A through S plus workforce development requirements. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we're on to issue 7A, if you're following along. This is a project-specific condition, and it's related to the final detailed engineering plans for the project. Consistent with where I've been in the past, I continue to think that this is a necessary condition. It gives our commission staff the ability to make sure as the final engineering design comes in that it's consistent with what we've approved. There was concern from the applicant that it's ambiguous, and I guess I would point to the statute. We are looking at the statutes to implement, this permit. And so, to me, it is not ambiguous. It's our staff is looking at the plans, deciding whether they comport with the final order and the statutes. If they think there's a mismatch, then they can bring it back to us. So I'm at alternative 1.
I agree, consistent with the reasons I've given in other cases. I think that this is important, so I'm also at alt 1.
I'm at alternate 1 as well. I think, as Chairperson Bach said earlier, so much is unknown about the design that it's absolutely important for us to have that information once those decisions are made.
Okay, so issue 7B. This is about any tree clearing activities that would have to happen to make the project, to construct the project, and whether those should be avoided during the period of April 1st through August 15th. And there's 3 different pieces going on in this docket. There's the bat periods, there's bird periods, and there's oak wilt. At least those are the 3 I identified. I am comfortable with the addition of the "to the extent practicable" that the applicant has included or proposed. We have done that in the past. However, I do think the April 1 through August 15th is the right period of dates based on the conditions present here. In particular, that oak wilt situation is an April 1 start date. And it does look to be a problem that our staff identified, that the DNR has identified for years. So where I would be was including the April 1 to August 15th, but adding the language "to the extent practicable." So that would be at alternative 2.
I was in the exact same spot.
Okay.
Me 3.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so 7C, this is another project-specific condition, and it's related to the forested areas in arrays 9 and 10. And as we just described, we've now boxed out those areas for solar panel placement. And the question here is whether or not collector circuits or access drives should be allowed in those areas. To me, 9 and 10 actually were a little different, where 9 looked like it was actually very easily avoided. The proposed collector circuit was coming in, and then it went north, and then it went east. And it seems to me like it could easily just continue to go east and then go north and avoid that. The area 10 was a little more of a challenge, so I'm very curious to see where you both are at on this. So I would definitely be comfortable avoiding area 9. I was a little unsure on what to do about area 10, but I think at the end of the day, it can be routed around 10 as well. So I'm gonna maybe let Chair Vach and Commissioner Strand give your thoughts.
I think it goes back to where I was initially and when we talked about 9 and 10, and that is if they're still in the preliminary stages, that I didn't find any evidence in the record that would make me believe that by removing 9 and 10 in terms of placing the collector circuits and those access drives, that is going to cause the project to fail, or that it's going to cause it to be unduly costly. So I was actually in favor of this specific condition, and I would have them avoid the areas in Array 10 and Array 9.
Just the wooded, the
Yep.
forested areas?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm in the exact same spot for all the reasons we've discussed to this point.
Okay. I'm going to join you there. That's where I thought that made sense, but I also
Yeah.
want to be sensitive to these detailed level changes. But I'm going to join you at alternative 1.
Okay.
Okay. Issue 7D is about mowing. So shall the applicant avoid mowing in the months of April through October? The applicant and Clean Wisconsin both support alternative 1 on this, as well as the DNR and our staff. So I'm at alternative 1.
I agree. Alternative 1.
Okay, issue 7E is, should an order condition addressing potential impacts to aesthetics be implemented as a condition of approval for the proposed projects? And this is related to the extent reasonable, should the applicant be working with and offering vegetation and visual buffers to non-participating landowners? This is another one where I wasn't exactly sure where to be. I think it's a close call. I think they are working with neighbors well. I think that evidence was in the record. So I'm going to pass again to Chair Vaughn to see if you had specific thoughts on this.
Okay, so for me, with the deciding factor on this one is the way that it's worded is the applicant shall work with interested, non-participating landowners. I think the applicant expressed some concern that this would require them to provide the vegetative buffers on any adjacent property, regardless of whether they're participating or non-participating. And I think that this order condition was written using the word interested on purpose. I mean, I think that that word means what the dictionary says it means. I don't interpret this as requiring the developer to go out and knock on every single door. But I do feel strongly that when we're talking about land use and the impact on both participating landowners and non-participating landowners, that it is incumbent on the developer to ensure that those neighbors are taken care of. And if a non-participating owner raises an issue and it's related to vegetation or, maintaining those visual buffers, I think that that is reasonable to require the developer to work with that landowner. So I was comfortable adopting this condition. I was at Alt 1, and the basis for that is because it's with interested, non-participating landowners.
Just a quick question for you, Chair. When you think about this, is it mainly residents, it's homeowners, or do you, I guess that's where kind of I was unsure of where the line, like if you've got property, but you don't, it's a farmland or something, and you just say, well, I want you to plant a bunch of trees on the edge of my property because I don't want to look at it, but I only look at it when I drive my tractor out there.
Right.
Is that really?
No,
Yeah.
I look at it in terms of it's your residence, right?
Yeah.
I think in one of the cases we talked about,
Yeah.
if I'm standing at my kitchen sink.
Yep.
And I'm looking out as I'm doing the dishes, am I entitled to talk to the developer about putting in some sort of visual
Yep.
buffer?
Yep.
Or vegetative screening?
Yep.
And I feel strongly that the answer to that question is
Right.
yes.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think if it's about, to me, is about the residences, it's about that place of living as opposed to your house is here, the solar panels are behind you, but you've got this farmland behind you that you now are requesting a buffer.
Correct.
Yeah. But it doesn't affect your,
Something.
No, I'm just, if you want that specificity, I would suggest that
Okay.
you modify it to say the applicant shall work with interested non-participating landowners that have residences that are adjacent to the solar panel
Right.
arrays.
I would completely 100% support that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's where I am too.
I'm there as well. I think the interested word is good because it narrows the universe.
Right.
And I think, again, anything we can do to help raise neighbors' comfort level with these types of projects is going to go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, with the addition, I'm going to join you both, so that would be at alternative 2 with that modification.
Yep.
So the next issue is issue 7F, and this is a specific landowner who I think is in the same position. So this is a public commenter named Lisa Schmidt, expressed she did not support the project and is concerned about the visual aesthetics as one reason. So the question here is, should the applicant work specifically with that homeowner to create and maintain visual buffers and vegetative screening? So I was at Alt 1 or Alt 3. I mean, maybe what we've just done kind of circumvents this particular landowner, and that's kind of where I was at.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think what the three of us just decided for 7E, that bucket catches concerned residents like Ms. Schmidt. So because of that, I would be at Alt 3.
Yep.
And I would say that, she, should use 7E as a basis to begin discussions
Yeah.
or continue discussions.
Yep.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, we are on issue 7G, and this is another specific landowner and resident, and this is related to the Zahn family. In the public hearing, Mr. Zahn made a comment, and then Ms. Zahn, Emily Zahn, also wrote a public comment at the conclusion of that, of the party hearing, I think. This is related to their residence, which is on Highway 6364. There's actually two issues. One is teed up in the decision matrix, but the other one was really talked about both in the public hearing and the comment made, and that was related to the driveway use and the driveway access. The driveway access is actually a bigger concern for me, and in particular because it's not just the solar panels, but it is in fact the O&M building and the project substation that is going to be located, that if they, for some reason, can't get the DOT approval for the specific access road, that they're gonna start coming into the Zahn driveway and then peel off and go. And I find that to be concerning. So as far as the setback goes, I'm open to that idea. I think that there's plenty of other land, and I think that in this particular case, that setting back, based on their proposal, is fine and could be, again, make the project palatable for a landowner and a resident. But I'm also curious if you have thoughts about the driveway issue. And I guess my proposal would basically be to add a condition that, they really need that separate access road. They need their own driveway. They really should not be using a private residence's shared driveway to get, not just for construction, but we're talking about 30 years, 40 years of operations. So, Chair?
Yeah, so, the actual highway project itself, we don't hold any sway. I know that there, as you indicated.
Right,
there
it's a
was that-
DOT
Right.
permit, whether it would be granted for that separate access road.
Right.
Right.
So, as it relates to this particular parcel and the driveway in particular, that's really concerning to me, to have a driveway or a part of the driveway be utilized as an access point while you're under construction, for a number of reasons. And so I was okay with the setback that's been proposed in this particular condition. I don't know that the setback eliminates that problem.
Right. Yep.
So I don't know, I was sort of at a loss for this one. I don't know how we mitigate the problem of
Yeah.
the driveway. I thought it was fascinating, the way that they went about splitting up
Yeah.
the driveway.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with this particular condition as it's written, recognizing it's not going to eliminate the concern about using the driveway
Yep.
and the access road.
Yep.
I agree about the setback. I think among what you guys discussed, I think it's also a safety issue for the landowner and how they're using that part of their parcel. So I support the setback condition, but the driveway, I do think, is an issue. And I think there's an easement involved and.
Yeah. So what I was, really where I wanted to go, I think with the driveway for myself at least, was I would like them to report back. I mean, I know they have to get all the permits that they've asked for, but essentially with this particular one, they could construct this project without that DOT permit. But I would propose that they actually need to get that access permit. And if they can't, that they need to tell staff that they
Yeah.
have not been able to secure it, so that staff can work with them on an alternative way to access that area of the project without using a residence's driveway.
Right. Or, right, just figure out.
You're gonna have to
figure
find
out
a new
different
way.
route.
Yeah.
Right,
And it doesn't look like there's a lot of options from the project map.
right.
So that's why I was sort of, the last data request response we have from them was, I think, September, and it said, our conversations with DOT are going well, we think we will get this access permit. Here we are 9 months later, 7 months later, we don't, our record's closed, so presumably hopefully that has gone well, but we don't know that today.
Do we just, wouldn't we catch it that they have to get that permit anyway? Right?
Well, I mean, that's, whether it's not our decision
Right.
on the permit, the limitations we typically put is you have to secure necessary permits. But this one, if there is another way, is not like, a DNR permit per se. So, and again, we may be fixing an issue that doesn't need to be fixed
Right.
if the permit is granted.
Correct.
So
Right.
I think getting more information and being alerted, and again, I'm sure the applicant is listening as to the concerns shared here by all of you as to the access. But something like, report back on the status, and if a permit cannot be obtained, directing to work with commission staff on alternatives. And if need be, it could come back, but hopefully they could figure something out, or that the permit will in fact be granted.
Right,
Yep.
okay. And that sounds to capture everything that you were
It
laid out?
does.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So I think I'm supportive of that, adding that as an additional condition.
Yep.
Okay.
You're okay with that? Okay. Okay, I think we're to our last one. The last of the most interesting ones, the stray voltage. And it does bear maybe taking a step back to say, at least from my perspective, appreciate the applicant's work with DNR on the seed mix. We didn't have a seed mix question this time because they agreed to the seed mix and it looks good. Waterway, wetland, lots of other things that the applicant did agree to. And there was evidence that they got feedback from DNR and commission staff. They changed things, and I think that's really positive. The fencing design would be another one where they agreed to raise it up off the ground. So appreciate the efforts on all that. So now here we are at stray voltage. Within a half a mile of the project area, and then the question is whether prior to installing any metal or conductive materials in the ground, or prior to construction. So I'm gonna address those two issues. One is the half a mile from the project area, and I would agree that, one thing we've adopted in some other orders is the project facilities. And I think that makes sense. And my understanding is that that is basically where the fence lines are, because the fence lines also need to be grounded. So I would be fine with that. The other question is about prior to the metal or conductive materials. We adopted that language when some prior developers were saying, well, we're gonna do some work on the land. Can we, do we need to do the stray voltage before we touch this land at all, or just before we start installing the solar equipment? And we said, no, that makes sense, the solar equipment. Now, this particular applicant has come back and said, well, we're gonna install metal signs in the ground. Is that what you mean? To me, that's not. And I don't know if we need slightly different language. There was a data request back and forth on this, and I guess I would basically agree with the conclusion of the applicant that we're looking at before you're installing solar energy equipment in the ground.
Yes.
So,
100%. I agree with everything that you've said, Commissioner Hebner. I agree with the applicant's proposed changes. And I'll just underscore, it's interesting because when we did make that switch to using the language installing metal or conductive materials, we were trying to be helpful
yeah.
to the developer.
Well, and constructive.
Right,
To what's
exactly.
actually happening.
Right, right, yeah. So it was interesting here, but certainly installing metal signs was not what we were getting at.
Right.
So I am comfortable accepting their proposed change as it relates to the project facilities rather than the project area. And, I mean, I think, I don't know how we make it more clear, installing any metal or conductive materials related to the,
Solar energy system?
yeah, the actual generation equipment. That's what I'm intending.
Yep. Commissioner Strand?
I agree. I think with everything that you guys said, I think the more clarity we can give this issue, the more clear it is on
Yeah.
why and how and when.
Right.
So I support the proposal with as much clarity as possible.
So I guess it would read, applicant shall work with the applicable distribution utility to make available stray voltage testing at each agricultural confined animal operation within 1/2 mile of the project facilities prior to installing any, what was the
Yeah,
word
this-
you used?
I'm looking back at the data request response, and maybe that's just the best place to go, is
Okay.
before any solar energy system construction activity that may interfere with testing commences.
Okay, good. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, issue 8 and starting with issue 8A is uncontested, so if you're still following along, we might have lost a few people there. Issue 8B, if approved, will the proposed project have undue adverse impact on other environmental values? And I am at alternative 1, that no, and I think especially the work related to the wooded lands really emphasizes this. But with that decision we've already made, then I'm at alternative 1.
I agree.
I do as well.
Issue 9 is should we grant the CPCN, and I'm at alternative 2 with the conditions that we've described here.
I agree, alternative 2.
Yes.
Okay, let me get my motion. In docket 9815 CE 100, I move we approve the applications with conditions consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that concludes our public information for today. We are going to go into closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85 1G to discuss a litigation matter with our general counsel. So I would ask that all members of the public exit the room.
I move that we recess the open meeting, go into closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.95 1G to discuss the litigation matter identified in item 17.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, while we were in closed session, we discussed the litigation matter and provided direction to our general counsel. And now we will reconvene for the purposes of adjourning the meeting. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 4th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m.
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, May 4th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.